Chapter 28. The phone rings and Sophia runs to answer it. Hello. Thank you ever so for telephoning us. Would you like to talk to me? She inquires in her fake posh voice. There's a pause, and then she says suddenly more seriously, yes he is, and passes the phone to Dad, who takes it into the other room so he can speak in private. It was Mr. Canby, Sophia nods lonely to me. At least for once she had the sense not to pester the caller with her usual silly questions. Dad is on the phone for what seems like ages. Gals, Mum and I are off to the hospital. Next door Auntie's coming over to sit with you, Sophia. Vinny, would you mind coming too to watch over the Canby children so their father can visit with us? I nod, and of course, Sophia complains. It's not fair. I'm a great hospital visitor. I can go talk to all the people who don't have visitors and... Enough, Sophia, Mum says suddenly cross. I'm sorry, but it's just not appropriate. Maybe next time. Mum put together some Indian food for Mrs. Canby, guessing the hospital food might not be what she is used to. Some kitchery and yogurt and a few sautéed jeera aloo, but tastes of little brown seeds that smell nice. Next door Auntie comes over just before we leave, and soon she and Sophia are playing cards. Cheating at cards always cheers Sophia up. We arrive at the hospital shortly after visiting hours have begun, so it is crowded with concerned family and friends. Gianni, Mum quietly asks Mrs. Canby as we approach the bed. Her face is turned to the window, and as she moves to look at us, we are shocked to see how ill she looks. She is thinner and paler, and clearly terrified of what will happen if she doesn't get well soon. How are you, Gianni? Mum takes her hand. Feeling a bit better, thank you, she says, but there are tears in her eyes. She is grateful for the home-cooked food Mum has bought, and the smell of it seems to lift her spirits a little, but it is brief, as she suddenly breaks into tears. I look around awkwardly, not know whether I should continue to stand there, but Mum instantly sits down by the bedside, and Dad looks around for some tissues. I just lean against the windowsill and hope I'm not in the way. Oh, Jasmine, Mrs. Canby sobs. How's her poor husband going to manage? Pinky's too small to do anything at home, and I miss Abby terribly. How's my poor husband going to cope without me? She cries, covering her face with her hands. I don't understand what the nurses are saying, and Abby is such a clever girl. She understands everything. Oh, how could I have let her go? I love her so much, but she will never know that now. Dad and Mum exchanged surprised looks, and I had to hold back from crying myself and begging Mrs. Canby to let Abby come home. She wanted to be a teacher, you know, but that will never happen. She'll just be a wife and mother like me, and a mother before me. I've had lots of time lying here thinking about it all, and I know that this way of life is, well, it isn't right for Abby. She looks down at the tissue she now clutches in her hand. Maybe she will still find a way to be a teacher. If she could come home, Dad quietly suggests. Positive thoughts are best, Gianni, he adds with a soothing voice. Then something I'm not expecting happens. Very quietly, Mrs. Canby says, Please ask my husband to bring Abby back. Please try, please. This could be my last request. Dad's face doesn't flinch. He only says firmly but calmly, I will try my best, don't worry. I look at Mum, who is struggling to hide her relief. This could be the miracle we've hoped for. Mum squeezes Mrs. Canby's hand harder. It'll be okay, she reassures. You must just focus on getting better. Mrs. Canby's eyes close and she seems to fall asleep. A doctor comes up at that moment and introduces herself as Dr. Begum. Seeing Mrs. Canby asleep, she's about to leave when Mum asks if they could speak to her about a private matter. They walk off to a separate room, leaving me standing uncomfortably beside the sleeping Mrs. Canby. My mind races with what she just asked. Later I learn that Dr. Begum is not surprised by my parents' story about Abby. She's heard similar stories of forced marriages and is already aware that Mrs. Canby is ready for her daughter's well-being. Dr. Begum has already decided to report it to the social services, telling my parents that it is her responsibility, but she is relieved to hear our family is also trying to help. Before anything else happens and Dr. Begum calls social services, Dad pleads for some time with Mr. Canby. He's certain he could get him to change his mind about Abby. Dad comes back into the ward and takes me to the TV room where the Canby children sit with their father. Vinny, will you watch the kids for half an hour, please? I need to speak with Mr. Canby. Outside on a damp bench, Nasir Kambi and Shekhar sat holding flimsy plastic cups of tea. The doctor seemed pretty confident she'll recover, Shekhar said, but how are you coping? I just can't manage without her, Mr. Kambi confesses, and for the first time since he was a young boy, he broke down and cried. Shekhar waited and said nothing, respecting Mr. Kambi's pride. Then he listened as the man offloaded all that he had been thinking and worrying about the past days. Finally, he spoke. Listen, you need help. We will do what we can, of course, but your wife needs a lot of care when she comes home from hospital. Who will do that? You have to work, and you have children to support. Dad took a deep breath. Why not bring Abby home? Everyone will understand. I can arrange a ticket for her if you wish, as long as you allow her to come home immediately. It's not that easy, Shekhar. What will people say? Nasir said, almost shaken. Look, I'll be honest with you. It's just not the care of your wife I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about Abby's welfare, and there is another complication, the hospital. I'm afraid your wife was so upset and confused following the operation that she told them what was worrying her, and now they have to report matters to the authorities. They contact social services. But I've tried. It's not that easy, Nasir started to interrupt. I don't think you fully understand what you've done, Nasir, Shekhar continued forcefully. In this country, what you've done is regarded as kidnapping. The school has already reported Abby's disappearance, and if you don't bring her back, you will leave me no option. I will have to go to the police and tell them that Abby's being kept up there against her will. I will tell them everything I know, and so will the staff here. Shekhar didn't mean to sound threatening. He was merely stating the facts. My friend, your promise will keep on growing and multiplying until they overwhelm you. Take action now. Do the right thing. But earlier that day, Nasir Kambi had tried to take action. He had already had several calls and visits from the school authorities and didn't want the police involved. He wanted his brother's Taj's advice and guidance. Taj was angry when he answered the phone. He was at wit's end. He had no idea how to handle Abby, beaten her, shouting at her, and still she was defiant, refusing to eat. Brother, talk some sense into your daughter, he barked, throwing the phone to Abby. Let me come home, Abu, she screamed. You bring shame on us all, you stupid girl, Nasir scolded her. You listen to your uncle and do exactly what he tells you. What is wrong with you? Are you ill? Why are you refusing to eat? All this crying is no good. Your uncle is a very generous man. Don't upset him and everyone like this. Please, Abu, let me come home, Abby sobbed. How could you just leave me here? I'll never do what they say, never. I'm going to starve myself to death and it will all be your fault. Abby pleaded and begged until eventually Nasir demanded she put his brother back on the phone. He suggested maybe Abby should return to England, just until her wedding, so they could help with her mother. But Taj was worried how it looked for her to return to England, and when Nasir mentioned the school authorities and his concerns that they would contact the police, Taj just scoffed at him and said that he did not believe the police would be interested in Abby. In the end, Taj's arguments won. Abby had not adjusted to life there, and for her to return to England now would make it worse come the wedding. Even Nasir agreed with that. He asked to speak to Abby one last time. I can't stay out here, please. Just let me come home. Please, Abu, Abby begged again. Abby, you have to listen to your uncle. He knows best. I have enough to cope with here with your mother in hospital. What? Why did you mention this last of all? What's wrong with her? Why don't you... Abby demanded. She's ill, pretty bad. Nasir started to explain, but before he could finish, Abby heard the dialing tone. The line was bad again, and the connection was lost. I have to call him back, Abby said in desperation. What's wrong with my mother? Taj stared at her as if she was a nuisance fly he was considering swatting. Her pleas were at this. Taj simply unplugged the phone and left the room with it clutched in his hand.